After 40, danger rarely looks dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't break the door down. It whispers. And the most dangerous word it uses is simple. Later. Later when things calm down. Later when the kids are older. Later when work is less demanding. Later when the economy feels safer. Later when I feel ready. It sounds responsible. It sounds mature. It sounds like patience. But after 40, later, is rarely about timing. It's about comfort. And comfort can quietly become a trap. Because life at this stage often looks stable. Income steady. Routine predictable. No major disasters. No obvious collapse. From the outside, everything works. And when everything works, urgency disappears. There's no fire to put out, no crisis forcing movement. So goals get postponed, health gets postponed, learning gets postponed, conversations get postponed, dreams get postponed. Not canceled, just delayed. And that delay feels harmless. 1 year becomes 2, 2 becomes 5. 5 becomes a version of you that slowly stopped expanding. The real risk after 40 is not failure. It's slow contraction. It's shrinking your world one postponed decision at a time. And the frightening part? You won't notice it happening. Because later feels safe. Until one day you look around and realize later quietly became never. By the time a man crosses 40, stability stops being optional. It becomes the goal. Not excitement, not ambition. Stability. A reliable paycheck. A routine that repeats without surprises. Bills handled. Responsibilities managed. No visible breakdowns. From the outside, this looks solid, respectable, mature. And in many ways, it is. There is strength in consistency. There is pride in being dependable. There is comfort in knowing what next month probably looks like. But stability has an invisible weakness. It depends on everything staying the same. The company must continue performing. The industry must continue valuing your current skill set. Your body must continue tolerating stress the way it used to. Your relationships must continue running without deeper repair. The system works as long as pressure stays low. And this is where the illusion quietly forms. Because the absence of crisis feels like progress. Nothing is collapsing. Nothing is urgent. So nothing feels necessary to change. You wake up. You work. You provide. You rest. Repeat. It feels controlled. But control is not the same as growth. No new competencies are being built. No uncomfortable risks are being taken. No deliberate expansion is happening. Everything functions, but nothing evolves. And that's where later becomes the silent agreement. Later, I'll update my skills. Later, I'll prioritize my health. Later, I'll repair that emotional distance. Later, I'll explore that business idea. It sounds patient. It sounds strategic. But often, it is deferred maintenance on your own potential. The illusion of stability is not that life is bad. It's that life is fine. Fine lowers urgency. Fine convinces you there's still plenty of time. But after 40, time compounds differently. Energy shifts gradually. Markets move quietly. Relevance erodes subtly. And the longer you remain in maintenance mode, the more foreign growth begins to feel. If this feels familiar, comment your age below. Not for comparison, just as a quiet acknowledgement that you're here and paying attention. The shift does not begin with a breakdown. It begins with something almost invisible. A slight reduction in edge. A small drop in hunger. a quiet loss of urgency. He doesn't feel defeated. He feels fine. But fine is often the first warning. He notices he gets tired earlier than before. Not sick, not weak, just less driven. He stops pushing himself physically. Workouts become occasional, then optional, then postponed. He tells himself it's temporary, just a busy season. He also stops stretching mentally. The books pile up unread, the courses bookmarked but never opened. He talks about upgrading his skills. But research replaces execution. Planning replaces starting. He consumes more content about change than he actually applies. Conversations begin to sound repetitive. He revisits the same frustrations, the same complaints, the same one-day ideas. He says, "I've been thinking about starting something. I just need more time. I'll do it after this quarter." But quarters pass, years adjust quietly, and the pattern hardens. Every postponed action teaches the brain something subtle. It teaches that intention is enough, that imagining growth feels similar to pursuing growth, that delay has no immediate consequence. There's no punishment for waiting, no alarm sounds. Life continues. Paychecks arrive, responsibilities are met, and because nothing collapses, the signals are easy to dismiss. But internally, something shifts. Confidence shrinks not from failure, but from inaction. Self-trust weakens. He starts hesitating more in small decisions, overthinking simple moves, avoiding mild discomfort. These are not dramatic red flags. They are micro-withdrawals from personal momentum. And momentum, once lost, does not disappear loudly. It fades quietly. That is the danger. Because when warning signs are quiet, they are easy to ignore. All it takes is one reassuring word. Later. The real damage of later is not external. It's internal. Nothing explodes. Nothing collapses. But something slowly erodes. And that erosion begins with self-trust. Every time he delays something that matters, he makes a quiet promise to himself. "I'll handle it soon. I'll start next month. I'll deal with it when things calm down." And when that promise isn't kept, even for practical reasons, the brain records it. Not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently. Over time, those broken micro-promises stack up. And confidence does not disappear because of failure. It weakens because of repeated inaction. There's a difference between trying and falling short, and never stepping forward at all. Failure can build resilience. Avoidance builds doubt. He begins to hesitate more. Small decisions take longer. Opportunities feel heavier. Risks feel exaggerated. Not because he lacks ability, but because he has practiced postponement. Identity is shaped by repetition. If you repeatedly act, you become someone who acts. If you repeatedly delay, you become someone who waits. And waiting reshapes how you see yourself. He no longer thinks of himself as ambitious. He thinks of himself as cautious. He no longer sees himself as adaptable. He sees himself as realistic. He calls it maturity. But deep down, there is friction, a subtle tension between who he once imagined becoming and who he is currently being. That gap creates a quiet emotional strain, not a diagnosis, not a label, just a persistent awareness of contraction. He watches others move, launch things, change careers, reinvent routines. And instead of feeling inspired, he feels slightly exposed, because he remembers when he used to move like that. The most painful part is this. He knows what to do. He's not confused. He's not incapable. He's just delayed long enough that action now feels unfamiliar. And unfamiliar feels risky. So he waits again, and each cycle reinforces the same internal narrative. This isn't the right time. If this resonates, type "no more later" in the comments. Not as a dramatic declaration, just as a quiet line in the sand. Because the psychological cost of comfort after 40 is not loud failure. It is the slow rewriting of who you believe you are. The financial cost of later rarely looks dramatic. There's no sudden collapse, no overnight disaster. Instead, it appears as quiet stagnation. Income continues. Bills are paid. Responsibilities are covered. From the outside, nothing seems wrong. But growth slows. Earning power plateaus. And plateau is easy to confuse with stability. Industries evolve whether we participate or not. Technology advances. Standards rise. New skills become normal expectations. If learning stops, relevance narrows. Not instantly, but gradually. And gradual change is the hardest to detect. When action is delayed year after year, flexibility decreases. Options shrink, not because doors slam shut, but because other people prepared earlier. They updated their skills, expanded their networks, experimented while risk was smaller. Preparation compounds, so does delay. There is also the hidden cost of missed compounding. A skill started at 35 has 10 extra years to mature. A side project started earlier has time to refine. Relationships nurtured consistently create leverage later. But when everything waits for the right time, nothing stacks. Time passes anyway, but growth does not multiply. Expenses, however, rarely freeze. Costs adjust upward over time. Energy levels shift. Risk tolerance naturally decreases with added responsibility. So when change eventually becomes necessary, not optional, it feels heavier, more disruptive, more intimidating. This is not about predicting financial crisis, and it is not investment advice. It is about trajectory. Stagnation limits optionality. Optionality is power. The ability to pivot careers, to negotiate confidently, to step away from something that no longer fits. Those abilities are built before they are needed. Later delays that construction. By the time urgency appears, preparation feels rushed, and rushed transitions rarely feel empowering. The consequence is not guaranteed loss. It is reduced leverage, reduced room to maneuver, reduced confidence in your adaptability. Comfort preserved the present, but it may have quietly limited the future. And over a decade, limitation compounds just as reliably as growth. At some point after 40, the financial questions become secondary. The deeper question is quieter. Is this who I am now? Not in a dramatic way, not in a midlife movie kind of way, but in small moments. Driving home in silence, sitting in a parking lot before going inside, waking up earlier than everyone else. There is a subtle realization. Life did not collapse. It simply narrowed. The version of him at 25 imagined expansion. More skills, more strength, more confidence, more options. But somewhere along the way, preservation replaced expansion. Protection replaced experimentation. Maintenance replaced growth. And it happened slowly enough that he didn't notice the trade. He became responsible, reliable, practical. All admirable traits. But layered underneath them is something harder to admit. He stopped betting on himself, not recklessly, not foolishly, just gradually. He began choosing what felt secure over what felt alive. And over time, that choice reshaped identity. He no longer introduces himself by what he is building. He defines himself by what he maintains. The job, the role, the routine, the obligations. And when someone asks about future plans, the answers sound cautious, measured, safe. That safety brings stability, but it also brings an uncomfortable question. If nothing changes in the next 10 years, will I respect the man I become? That question is not about money. It is about alignment, about whether his daily actions still match the internal image he once carried. The crisis is not loud. It does not announce itself as despair. It shows up as restlessness, as mild envy when seeing someone take initiative, as defensiveness when hearing about risk, as quiet regret over things that were almost started. This is the real weight of later. It reshapes identity before it reshapes circumstances. He does not feel like a failure. He feels smaller than he used to feel. One and shrinking rarely feels urgent. It just feels slightly off. But living slightly off for years creates a gap between who he is and who he believes he could still be. The hard lesson after 40 is uncomfortable. Later is rarely about time. It is about avoiding discomfort. It is about protecting the current version of your life from friction. Starting something new threatens competence. Improving your health threatens routine. Having a difficult conversation threatens stability. So the brain offers a compromise. Not no, just not now, and that feels harmless. But delay trains hesitation. Hesitation weakens momentum. And momentum, once lost, requires more effort to rebuild than to maintain. The truth is simple. You do not need a dramatic reinvention. You do not need to quit your job. You do not need to take reckless risks. You need movement. Small, deliberate movement. Before you feel ready. Before everything aligns perfectly. Because readiness is often a byproduct of action, not a prerequisite. Clarity comes after motion. Confidence follows execution. And identity shifts when behavior shifts. After 40, the cost of waiting increases. Energy is more precious. Time is more visible. Years feel shorter. That is not fear. That is awareness. The shift begins the moment you act, before comfort gives permission. One decision. One uncomfortable step. One promise kept. Not later. Now, after 40, life rarely falls apart in one dramatic moment. It narrows through repetition, through small postponements, through reasonable delays. Later sounds harmless. But over years, it reshapes identity. Not because you failed, but because you waited. The good news is this: the same way identity was shaped by delay, it can be reshaped by action. Not extreme action, not reckless change. Just one decision made before comfort approves. One promise kept. One uncomfortable step taken now instead of later. You do not need to become a different man overnight. You need to prove to yourself that you still move, that you still choose, that you still expand. If this conversation helped you see something clearly, subscribe. This channel is about thinking clearly after 40. Without hype, without fear tactics. Just honest reflection about growth, identity, and momentum. And before you leave, answer this. What is one thing you've been telling yourself later about? Write it in the comments, not as a public announcement, just as a commitment to awareness. In the next video, we'll talk about why comfort feels safer than growth, and how that safety quietly limits potential. I'll see you there. I'll see you.